take the grandkids, teach them these things so that there is a respect for those who have gone before and have provided for them. Hebrews chapter 12 says, we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. The idea in one of the translations is there's a grandstand in heaven watching us participate in this life. That song that may I be found faithful. May those that come behind me find me faithful. To have the privilege of life and have the privilege of living gives us the opportunity to be a living letter, a living example of God's goodness. You know, Paul says, all things are permissible to me, but not all things are expedient. And then over in James it says, not many of you should want to be teachers or take upon yourself the responsibility of leading others, because you'll be held to a higher standard. We can get into all kinds of quibbling over, is it right to go to movies? Is it right to drink wine? Is it right to dance? Is it right to do this? Is it right to do that? And people brothers and sisters in the Lord are willing to choke each other half to death over some of these things. Well, let's look at it this way. I want to please Jesus. I want to be an example that others can follow just by looking. I have every day I come down here and I am greeted in some way or the other by one of the kindergarten kids coming up and hugging my leg and looking up and saying, Pastor Moore, I love you. And I say, I love you too. I love you too. Jesus said it'd be better to have a millstone tied around my neck and have that cast into the ocean and me drown with it than it would be to do something that's going to cause one of these little ones to sin. I've got to be very careful where I go, what I do, what I permit. I remember, there was music that I grew up with, Bobby V and Gene Pitney and Dwayne Eddy and his twanging guitar, and it was music that I really liked, And so I had some of my old record albums, and I made audio tapes of them. And we were getting ready to take a trip, like we're getting ready to take, and I said, I'll take some of that music. And we were driving along, and I popped in one of those things, and Bobby V started singing, and the Holy Spirit said, is this really what you want to put, Pastor, into these child's hearts? I said, well, Lord, he's just singing about love. And the Lord said, they don't need to be thinking about love right now. I mean, they got enough hormones raging in them without you opening the door and making it worse. And they might listen to it, but I mean, I pulled it. Now we do, when we leave, and I will be playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, Thursday morning, as we're going out the driveway, we do listen to, every time we get ready to go on a major trip like this, Johnny Horton singing, in 1814, we took a little trip, along with Colonel Jackson, down the mighty Mississippi. Took a little bacon, and we took a little beans, and we caught the bloody British in the town of New Orleans. We fired our guns, and the British kept a-coming. We will be doing that, because we're getting ready to take a trip. But we have to be careful, don't we? Because we are living memorials to what God has planned for others. You ask yourself the question, you got Mrs. Dreyer here today. And this is not flattering, ma'am, but this is one of the most wonderful teachers that Millville school system ever had. Her and Miss Miller were just fabulous teachers. And they still are, because they held the line. She knew that algebra was more important than a history trip to Philadelphia. And she was great. Just a great teacher. And she, and like Miss Miller, when she retired, I got some of her literature books. She gave me a couple of her literature books. And there's stories in there that I still have the literature books, and I try to read them to the children, because they put into the children's hearts courage and strength. One of the stories was about Charles Lindbergh. It's called Alone. Now, I don't know how much you think about Charles Lindbergh. Probably nothing at all anymore. But Lucky Lindy was the name that everybody in the world knew because he was the first person to solo fly the Atlantic Ocean. He was in an airplane for over 30 hours. The airplane had no window. The Spirit of St. Louis had no window. It just had side windows like this. And you flew by instruments. And the night before, he was so excited he couldn't sleep. And it had rained all night long. And so the field was muddy, and they wasn't sure that they were going to be able to even clear the telephone lines at the end of the field or not. He might hit them and go down. And yet he was able to just barely clear them, and he went to sleep. Have you ever driven? Have you ever been out driving like 24 hours without sleeping or anything like some of these truckers probably have? I'm telling you, it is agonizing to try and stay awake. He did that for over 30 hours. And he made that flight from New York City to Paris, France. Very courageous. Our history is filled with courageous things like this. Our families are filled with stands of courage that different ones have made. Our churches are filled with courageous people. Names that we don't even remember anymore. We sit in this beautiful building today because of the courage and strength of people 30 years ago that were willing to give whenever they wasn't sure that they would be able to finance some of their own needs. But God was faithful. What we can do today as we project ahead is found in Psalm 92. It's one of my favorite passages of Scriptures, and the older I get, the more favorite it becomes. And it says, the uncompromisingly righteous, verse 12 of Psalm 92, the uncompromisingly righteous shall flourish like the palm tree, be long-lived, stately, upright, useful, and fruitful. They shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon, majestic, stable, durable, and incorruptible. Planted in the house of the Lord, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. Growing in grace, they shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be full of sap, of spiritual vitality, and rich in the verdure of trust, love, and contentment. They are living memorials to show that the Lord is upright and faithful to His promises. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in Him. That's my goal. That's my goal, to be a living memorial. I think there are times that I will go out to the cemetery. I think it's called Laurel Lawn. It's over there by the inspection station in Bridgeton. And I'll go find Sister Scholl's gravesite. Now, Sister Scholl was ordained at her funeral by the district. Never a well-known individual within Assembly of God circles, but boy, did I love her. I loved her. And the night that she passed away, I had the youth group from the church over here, and I was taking them home. The church had an old bus that we had bought up in North Jersey. Dwight Cooper had gone up and got the bus. We paid $200 for it. Broke down on the way back down here on the turnpike, and he got stranded. You had to turn it this much before anything ever connected to the wheel. You know? So you're doing this all the time, just trying to keep it straight. Anyway, I was coming back after delivering the kids home in that bus. And the Spirit of the Lord came on me, and I just began to sing and weep and sing and weep and sing and weep. And when I got home, I walked in the door, and Shirley said, there's something, I got to tell you, it's bad. I said, what's that? She said, Sister Scholl died today. And then it all kind of made sense what had happened. And I'm thinking, who can ever replace this woman? Who can do that? Who can replace Moses?